Donald Trump's late December 2025 meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at Mar-a-Lago landed at a fraught inflection point. A fragile Gaza ceasefire that is holding just enough to keep diplomacy alive, and a region still braced for escalation with Iran, Hezbollah, and a volatile Syrian theater. Publicly, the encounter was designed to project unity and momentum. Privately, it underscored how thin the margin is between next phase diplomacy and a return to open conflict. By the time Netanyahu arrived in Florida, the US-backed Gaza framework Trump unveiled earlier in 2025 had reached its hardest stretch, moving from a ceasefire and hostage release phase into a governance and security endgame. That transition is always where deals stall because it forces decisions on who rules, who polices, who disarms, and who guarantees. Questions that cannot be postponed indefinitely. The meeting was also about optics and leverage. Trump wanted to demonstrate he can drive outcomes, pushing the parties towards phase 2. Netanyahu wanted to show he retains Washington's full political and strategic backing while pressing the US to keep Iran and Hezbollah contained and to keep Israel's military freedom of action intact. The US vision for phase 2 includes a demilitarized Gaza and Hamas's loss of governance and armed role in the Strip. It also includes an international supervisory architecture described as a board of peace and multinational stabilization or security force concept that is still not formed but politically sensitive and contested in mandate and optics. Netanyahu reiterated Israel's core red lines, namely that Gaza cannot remain a platform for armed attacks. Hamas's military capability must be neutralized, and Israel's security control, primarily the complete release of hostages, cannot be traded for promises that may fail. Phase 2 demands structural change, not just a pause in fighting. That runs into three deadlocks. Number one, Hamas signals it will not simply surrender weapons absent a credible end to Israeli occupation. Israel insists disarmament is a prerequisite for withdrawal and reconstruction. That is a classic who goes first trap. Number two, technocratic administration models sound tidy on paper, but they collide with facts on the ground. Any interim authority needs protection, revenue, border arrangements, and a buy-in from regional actors, each of which is contested. Number three, a stabilization force risks being seen as an occupying army. Countries are wary of mission optics and casualties. Meanwhile, there is a gulf between US-Israeli expectations and what regional or European governments would accept. In this context, Trump's hardline insistence on Hamas disarmament is both a negotiating position and a domestic political signal. It may strengthen Israeli confidence in US backing, but it can also narrow the diplomatic corridor if no face-saving pathway exists for Hamas or its patrons.
Well, we talked about Hamas and we talked about disarmament, and they're going to be given a very short period of time to disarm, and we'll see how that works out. Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner will be in charge of that from our side, but if they don't disarm as they agreed to do, they agreed to it, and then they'll be held to pay for them, and we don't want that. We're not looking for that, but they have to disarm within a fairly short period of time.
Even as Gaza dominates headlines, Iran is framing the strategic horizon. Trump issued explicit warnings that the US could strike again if Iran attempts to reconstitute its nuclear program or rebuild key capabilities. From Netanyahu's perspective, Iran is not a separate factor. It is the command node. Tehran's missile programs, nuclear latency, and regional network of armed partners shape Israel's calculations in Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, and beyond. Israel's message has consistently been, if Iran regenerates, every local ceasefire becomes temporary.
I hope they're not trying to build up again, because if they are, we're going to have no choice but very quickly to eradicate that buildup. So I hope Iran is not trying to build up, as I've been reading that they're building up weapons and other things. And if they are, they're not using the sites that we obliterated, but they're using possibly different sites. We know exactly where they're going, what they're doing, and I hope they're not doing it because we don't want to waste the fuel on a B-2. It's a 37-hour trip both ways. I don't want to waste a lot of fuel.
Netanyahu also used the meeting to reinforce concerns about Hezbollah and the Lebanese state's limited capacity to enforce disarmament. Trump, when asked about striking Hezbollah over refusal to disarm, publicly hedged, suggesting watchful conditionality rather than a blank check. The leaders also touched on Syria and border stability under new leadership, with a focus on maintaining calm on Israel's Syrian frontier and the role of regional powers, including Turkey, in any Gaza stabilization concept. Trump is doubling down on a peace through coercive leverage model. Netanyahu is seeking maximum security outcomes with minimum strategic constraints. He needs US backing for Israel's security posture across Gaza, Lebanon and Iran, while managing domestic pressure and the hostage issue. The hard part is no longer stopping the war, it is building a post-war order. Reconstruction, governance, policing and legitimacy cannot be solved by rhetoric alone. Without a credible enforcement architecture that regional actors can accept, Phase 2 remains vulnerable. If Tehran is perceived as regenerating nuclear or missile capacity, Trump's statements indicate the US wants to keep a ceiling firmly in place by threat if necessary. Trump and Netanyahu used this encounter to align publicly, but they have not resolved the central implementation gap. The Mar-a-Lago meeting reinforced a strategic direction, contain Iran, compel Hamas, and stabilize borders, while highlighting the Middle East's next phase will be decided less by declarations and more by the operational plumbing of a post-conflict order.
Been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing.